agency, you see throughout the agency that there is a lane or a willingness to support diversity and inclusion and different diverse initiatives. So it was just important to me that Black History Month became one of those, and everybody was very supportive from the top down with Annette and Diane and HR, Lisa, Office Services, Ken, everybody. So it's been awesome. Ebony, I have to give her a special shout out every time I can, Ebony Clark, because I don't know a lot of people outside the agency, so she was very helpful with making those connections and helping us secure panelists and a wonderful lunch, courtesy of rolling out over there. So we have, as you know, and as you see here, a panel event planned, Past, Present, Future, Impact of Black Voices. It's a discussion panel. The title of the panel is intentional. As you know, Black people, we are not all the same. So Voices was intentional. Everybody has a different perspective, and you'll see that up here with the panelists. We have men, we have women, we have different age groups. So it should be a great discussion, and they'll be followed by a Q&A. So make sure you're listening intently so you can ask questions. And we'll also be giving away at the end tickets to the Motown Museum in Detroit over on Grand River. Each ticket, or they're on gift cards, and each gift card has 2 adult admission tickets in them. So your red ticket was your entry into that contest. So we'll be doing that at the end. So prizes are available. So first we'll start off, we'll have Mr. Steed come up, and he's going to talk a little, well, he's going to introduce himself and talk a little bit about his company and kind of what he does, and then we'll bring up the rest of the panelists after, and then we'll go ahead and get into the questions. All right, so give it up for Mr.
How's everybody doing?
Doing well.
All right, so let's do a little housekeeping. I'm going to be on my IG so we can get it. Everybody happy Black History. Now, hey, I'm Munson. I'm here at Carat. This is their Black History Month program, their celebration. Say, everybody, Happy Black History Month.
Happy Black History Month.
All right. Send that out. I want to know how much we love it. We love Chevy. We love Buick. We love Cadillac, and that's why we're here and we're proud. I'm Munson Steed. I want to say thanks. Probably for all of you think about rolling out, you may or may not know us, but Chevy has. So as a vendor, I want to say thanks to Chevy, because it hasn't been just this year. Pretty much since our existence, we've been around 20 years. And kind of give you an idea, anybody heard of Ludacris?
Yeah.
So Ludacris was Chris Lover, and we're based in Atlanta. And literally, he was a radio DJ when I met him. And a young lady said, he's going to be hot, he's going to be the biggest thing ever. And Jermaine Dupri walks in the room and say, yeah, he's going to be big. And at that moment, if you were Black, being on the cover of Vogue really wasn't an option. Being Rihanna, what you see, really wasn't real less than 20 years ago. What you call the Metro Times, I was an alternative weekly for that. And we expanded rapidly, obviously in the D, and we expanded to 19 cities, print. At that same time, if you can imagine, LaFace Records planted itself in Atlanta. So Tony Braxton and some little 16-year-old runs in the room. Anybody have an idea who it was? Usher. So Usher runs in, and they say he's big, and there was a LaFace Records place there, big headquarters, and L.A. Reid would ride up in his Rolls Royce and say hello. And my cousin, anybody heard the song Hey Ya?
Yeah.
So my cousin Brian Barber literally shot the video, and if Andre was here or Big Boy were here, we just had a whole Atlanta energy session. And still, obviously, the Future was recent. You got anybody know this guy?
Yes.
Your homie? So he was in my office. We've got a studio, about 15,000 square feet, podcast. And we're probably the last Black-owned, outside of myself, Byron Allen, the Upscale family, and then it moves to all the young people, obviously the bloggers. So any of our other friends, and they're all family in there, from Jazz and Brand to B. Michael or any of those other people. So the landscape has changed in the last 20 years. You could see Ebony. If it hadn't been for Ebony, I would not be here. But at the same time, you have to be able to pivot. This is probably the whole era. You got the next thing for me?
She's working on it.
She's working on it.
Video?
Yeah, kind of go to video.
Yeah, this one.
This is a really short video, so you gotta listen. I'm with that.
About changing lives. So how has life changed, World, starting with you? How has life changed already with this project out, being on the cover, rolling out, everybody seeing that?
So, if you're not relevant in this market, everybody know who this person is?
Angela Yee.
Angela Yee, but 2 Chainz is actually on the Breakfast Club. So he just dropped his album, it's working. There was a time that you really wouldn't have been a print or a digital vehicle and actually had people like the Breakfast Club mentioning you. So she's telling them that they're on the cover, which they are, on the cover of Rolling Out, and 2 Chainz is in our headquarters kind of giving a little bit of talk. Go ahead. That's the behind the scenes at Rolling Out. So it's kind of what we do, and it's how our brand has evolved. Because if you're not making the music, if you're not created and connected to the individuals, and you're a print band, you're gonna die. If you're a digital brand only and you have no connection to the celebrity and he's not gonna put you on his Instagram, you're gonna die. And if they're not acknowledging your relevance. And so for me, if it was a message to Carat, it's kind of like, think of how you can double down on being a really authentic connection with our community. With the general market, you got them any day you want to run an ad. But you really aren't having a multicultural budget. You probably want to know that the competition does. You know, for you that are kind of new to this business, you guys used to own Black women when Chevy actually owned Essence. The largest, most impactful event for Black women every year in New Orleans. And I kind of say that just to kind of set the stage. The business has moved, everything has moved in here, and how you stay relevant and pivot every single day is what's going to make our brand relevant. And for any real connection that you're going to talk about, if you can't say that it's really authentic, then you might just be buying spots and robots. And I think that that's kind of something, just for me as a message, when you think about what you do, as you're advocating and educating your client, just know your competition is really immersed in the community. Lastly, for all of you here, you should probably talk to the young lady, what was the president's name? Annette, and come to our conference. So we do a conference every year in Atlanta called RideCon. So Rolling Out no longer just does print. Rolling Out does digital. Rolling Out has a digital network. We do custom content. We launched a couple of your competitors' cars. But I say that to say, try not to use multicultural and not use authentic voice or create that connection. Because when you're not creating that connection, you got people with 1 million followers who are actually getting 20,000 of them to respond immediately. So try to have an authentic voice and leverage your multicultural. I mean, Ebony has a true insight. If it hadn't been for her, I wouldn't have bought lunch. I need to buy lunch for you. We're really not buying media, and I can be here. But as much as I can educate and celebrate with you, and celebrate with Chevy, and give new considerations, I always will. I appreciate the call, Ebony. I appreciate the call, and I appreciate the opportunity. But let's really immerse yourselves. You're in Detroit, so you're going to hear a lot of lies when people sell you media. Because at the end of the day, if you're in New York, you'd be making media, all of you young people. If you're in LA, if you're in Atlanta. So I think that we can just get a real authentic voice and an authentic idea and come away from that. We'll see why, and we can talk about why Ebony had such a hard time and why the Shade Room's doing such a phenomenal job. So that's my 3 cents.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we'll bring bring up the rest of the panelists now, and then we'll really get into some tea. No, I'm playing. So we'll have Constance Thomas from GM. Come on up. Martin Barber. Come on now. Ebony, come on now. So these are our lovely panelists today, everybody. We're going to get started. I'm just going to move a little bit closer. And if I haven't said, I'm Jennifer, and I'm the moderator, so bear with me. All right, so we have some questions here, and we're going to start off with you, Constance. Awesome. And the mic's there for you guys to use. Those are on. Hello. And yes, everyone here? I'll make sure. Okay. So, considering recent events and when you think about the theme of the panel, past, present, future, impact of Black voices, and then when we think about some recent events that have transpired, where we're seeing major brands sort of miss the mark with their advertisements, right? I don't know how many people remember there was H&M, the whole young Black boy in a hoodie that said the coolest monkey in the jungle.
Barnes and Noble.
Well, okay, Barnes and Noble.
Barnes and Noble was this month.
This month?
Yeah, they literally thought, and this is what happens in the inside. They thought, so they probably didn't have a multicultural team, and they decided that for Black History Month they were going to put black faces on Frankenstein and other books across that they already had, and they thought that was a good idea to do blackface.
Yeah,
and so it continues because there's no real representation in the room, and they have no authentic relationship with the community.
Right, and that's like we've seen with Gucci as well, who did with blackface sweater. We saw that with Pepsi, who was criticized for trivializing the Black Lives Matter movement. But how do you see companies and brands being a part of a big company and brand, kind of ensuring that these missteps and that they don't happen?
Well, I could actually talk about my journey and actually how I got to General Motors. I got to General Motors because they saw a need for the multicultural representation on the team as a whole, the central team. So I am a part of the multicultural marketing team, but we're the center of excellence. So I work across all of the brands. So that's Buick, GMC, Cadillac, and Chevrolet. So myself and Michelle Alexander, and we had a few other people, but through restructures right now, it's just myself and Michelle, we were brought in to bring those insights. We were able to bring the insights from an African-American perspective, but also just from a cultural perspective. I may not be Hispanic, but it's still an understanding of culture. You have your LGBTQ, understanding the culture and really being sensitive to those things. I mean, prime example, another myth, as much as I love him and as much as the African-American community has set this man up, Ralph Lauren. Ralph Lauren using Phi Beta Sigma's sign and the Mason sign on his pants. They thought it was just a cool thing to do, but I'm a part of a Greek organization, and when I saw it just in passing, I'm like, what just happened? I was like, did he talk to them? Because if that's cool, then okay, go ahead, Sigmas, that's amazing, right? But coming to find out, they just thought it was a cool symbol. But you didn't have anybody on your team to be able to really provide that insight, and that's one of the things that we really focus on. We run the data, we do surveys, trying to understand and talk to our consumers out there what's going on. So one of the things that I do on my end is I work with our activations. So think of NAACP, National Urban League, think of LULAC, which is a Hispanic program, Out and Equal Workplace Summit, which is a LGBTQ focused activation. When we're there, we do those job leads, right? But then once it's over, you provide that survey and you ask them, what did you think? Sometimes we ask those hard questions. Did we hit the mark? We just did our G-Man General Motors African Ancestry Network program 2 Fridays ago. Once that's done, we still ask them, did you enjoy it? Did we hit the mark? So we had Lonnie Johnson on as our guest speaker, actually, our keynote speaker. We had Invo. By show of hands, does anybody know who Lonnie Johnson is? Wow. So it's things like that we need to make sure we can continually tell the stories of sometimes those unsung heroes that you don't hear. So I am. But wait, there's more. There's more, right? So no, Lonnie Johnson is the creator of the Super Soaker. He is an HBCU grad. He went to Tuskegee University. He has his bachelor's and his master's in nuclear engineering. He left there, went to work for NASA and Air Force. But it's being able to provide those opportunities for us, because it's not just close to GM, it's for everybody to come, but for us to have those moments, to share those stories, and that's what we constantly do. And I think what happens, you need people in the company that are able to say, I'm connected. I mean, I want to say, I'm black, so I get it. Everybody who's black doesn't get it, you know. You may have, you know, a Caucasian male or a Caucasian woman who happens to be married to an African American or somebody else, and they've just appreciated our culture and they understand it, but they're also sensitive to say, I get it, I'm not trying to take over, but I appreciate what you're doing. So it's being able to have those tough conversations. We have to have those tough conversations, but also being able to have those people in the room when they're having those conversations on creative. So that person who said, oh, this is cool, I like this symbol. There should have been somebody in the room. Do you know what this is? This is a Phi Beta symbol. Like, this is their symbol for their fraternity. You know, this is a Mason symbol. We can't do this. What are you doing? That does not make sense. Being able to have somebody to hold your team members accountable. And that's not what's happening. They're not accountable, so then you get the apology. I am so sorry we missed the mark. We're going to do better. No. Do better while you're doing it. Don't do better after the fact because you want to apologize and you got caught. And it's about holding those people accountable before they get caught and putting it out there. You have to have those conversations because it gets very uncomfortable.
Absolutely. Anybody else? Any thoughts?
No, Lonnie actually, he's not just the creator of Super Soaker. He's the guy that caught Hasbro cheating. He owns the patents. And so he got $75 million because Hasbro infringed on his patents with their Nerf gun. So for most people, at least for those of us, because Lonnie lives in Atlanta and is a friend of the brand, we understand that, you know, when you're not talking, it's the ownership. It's like, how do you pay the Sigmas for actually for actually offending their brand, because they would probably never just lent it to you. So at the end of the day, I think for all of us to just kind of be conscious about what we're doing. But I think for you know, Ebony has a whole lot to say about this.
I'm gonna
All right.
I do. So, you know, in doing research, according to the 2019 Bureau of Labor Statistics, there are only 8% of people who identify as African American or Black within the advertising, PR, or marketing industries. When it comes to diversity and inclusion, if you're doing it right and you're actually trying to push the needle and understand your underrepresented employees, growing your audience by the culture, it's very important. But when it comes into, like Munson and Constance said, oh, let me make this right. Oh, well, we didn't know. That's when it becomes ill and it's not intended for its purpose. So brands actually have to realize that, one, the African American community is pushing the needle towards culture. Like we see now in the news, the 14-year-old who created the Renegade dance, no one knew who she was, but she created this. However, a TikTok influencer that was not a person of color actually started doing it and ran with it, and she was getting all this recognition. But right, but now she was at the All-Star game on Sunday where she performed at halftime and she got the recognition she deserved. So I think brands need to not just think about the culture like, oh, we're just going to check this box. No, you literally need to lean in to the culture and pick up little different things that are organic or that speak to your brand, your objectives. You can't just leave it out there and say, oh, it's over there, we don't want to deal with it because it may be taboo. It's okay to say Black people. It's okay to say African American. It's okay to give the culture its credit. So I just think that brands definitely need to lean in more and not be afraid.
So that makes, I have a follow-up, if you don't mind. Do you think then that there is a fear within brands and in brand leadership? Like you're saying, it's not a bad thing to say Black or say African American. So, what are your thoughts?
I think it is because they don't know. Brands don't know.
Right.
And they think it's not taboo. Just hire the right people that are able to speak to experiences, the culture, the swag, and not misstep over, oh, we're going to use these symbols that you have no idea what they really mean.
And to your point, it's not fear, it's just that risk factor. Sometimes what you hear is, it's too risky.
Yeah.
That's too risky. I can't remember what we worked on. We had got a proposal sent to us, and one of the people that came up was 2 Chainz. No, was it 2 Chainz? I think it was 2 Chainz. And it was like, oh, he's
It's a rapper.
Yeah, it was a rapper. I want to say it's 2 Chainz because he's the one that was a basketball player, right? And has like the degrees and like went on a basketball scholarship. Like this dude is way more than his rap music.
Yeah.
But what happens is, you know, you're judging a book by its cover before you open the book.
Yeah.
And it's just like, get to know this dude. This man is such a family man. He loves his children and his wife. Like, loves his children and his wife. And he will talk about, like, his coach. Like, the last album he had, he literally talked about that basketball experience he had and what his coach did for him and how he took him out. And he is a graduate. He has his degree. It's not, oh, I just went to school and not stop. Like, the brother has a degree, but what happened? It looks too risky because it's like, oh, is there going to be a shooting? Is there going to be this? You know, is he going to cause a disruption? So it gets a little scary. So that's when you bring in the experts. That's when you bring in a COE and your other multicultural leaders and say, hey, no, this is, if we do it this way, we have another narrative that we can say. It's about how we, because if we're the creatives, right? We're sitting here, we're helping build the strategies and those ideas, and we're working with our agency partners. So if we're doing that, no, this is how we tell the story. We weave it this way, and there's so many other layers to a person's story than what you see on TV, and that's where it stops.
To piggyback off of all of that, I definitely think there is a type of fear. I think for me, not speaking as a media, you know, professional or SME, but speaking more as a consumer, I don't think the fear has been properly verbalized yet. To me, I think the fear is within themselves. The one thing you cannot take away from any corporation is the human element. You may be the CEO, but you're still who you are inside. And I think as corporations and as a country, we have yet to admit that while you yourself may not be racist, many of the ideologies you may think are normal have been taught to you by a racist structure and a racist system. Something made them think it was okay to put blackface on Frankenstein in this day and age. And you're not speaking to the culture when the things or the visuals you use to represent said culture are the very things that oppressed them or triggered them. Where we heard it in our town hall meeting a few weeks ago out of New York, Nick Bryan and his successor were speaking very specifically about avoiding, quote unquote, the pale male complex. The pale male complex is not specific to any one individual. It's more of a form of groupthink. You have to understand that what you've probably been taught in your history classes, in your college history classes, in your high school history classes, absent of an African American history, really, lesson plan, what you've been taught are the things that we don't necessarily look to with any happiness. And so the things that you think are going to speak to us, they do, but not in the way that you might suspect. I recently saw a post where someone posted on Facebook a note to teachers. You don't have to relate to every black high school student by putting your lesson into a hip hop song. And it's very true. We have enough rappers. 2 Chainz is a degree professional. Lil Wayne is a degree professional. As crazy as he may look on TV, the young man has a bachelor's in psychology, and 9 times out of 10 is smarter than the person that's interviewing him. He's more savvy, he's more business-minded, and he's more successful. We don't even, as a contemporary culture, outside of certain voices, we don't even have the ability to peel back the layers of these individuals in order to show all that they are. So I definitely think the fear is there, but I think the fear sometimes comes from within the company or the individuals in the company, that what you put out there is a reflection of what you believe. And so sometimes in erring on the side of caution, they go too far the other way. And when they don't have that consultation, when they don't have that voice of reason, that voice, the checks and balances that are necessary to make sure you speak to the culture quietly and privately, you wind up sticking your foot in your mouth And we're not necessarily a culture that you want to do that with, because word of mouth still resonates in our culture in such a heavy regard that the wrong misstep can ruin your brand. And so we must be careful.
Yeah, but I think for everybody in the room, and advertising, and particularly talking about percentage, it's all about investment. And so for me, a person who's been a friend of GM and obviously a fan of Ebony, it's always begged the question, you know, can I go to Ebony and give her an idea, and as an advertising professional, have y'all given her and empowered her to actually have a budget? So at the end of the day, if she doesn't have a budget, for me, I'm like, well, why would you do that to her as a professional? At the end of the day, if your multicultural division doesn't have a budget, then at the end of the day, it's really not a division. It's like, how do you disrespect the person that's there? I love her, so if she calls, I say, I'm coming. But at the end of the day, I've already got my dollars from investment, and it's somebody I really don't hang out with. I really don't know. So I say that to say, even from a bigger standpoint, and I know we had a quality issue for a minute. They used to talk about our product. But now we don't have the same issue, and we're still doing the same commercial. We don't have the same issue, but we got the same commercial. We got people in our cars now, but we running we paying JT Powers, we still doing the same commercial, when the person that's number one ain't doing that. And they're doing things that everybody in the room gotta know, well, what is the competition doing? And I just gave you an example of what they're not doing. Like, I know where I can go at the number one car person, and I know the brand manager. That's a very different relationship. And so in Detroit to win, you really got to now look at what First Mover's doing all the way around. And that's from an advertising standpoint. That's like, are you at Complex? And so that's not a black brand, but it's a very multicultural brand. And you got to figure out how that relates. And if we're not going to be at Essence, do we have the courage to be like Nike and be everywhere? They don't sponsor one thing. And I think you've got to take the gloves off and kind of say, do we want to win? Or do we want to just say, we did these metrics? Because I can give you some metrics. I can come back. Ebony's not going to let me propose a program. She's not going to let me propose a program that doesn't have any metrics. So I just say that to the investment. Because I think that is the message for me, is the investment here is still not an investment in culture. There's no $1 million budget that you've given a woman. So now, not only as a professional, but as a female professional, they're saying her leadership isn't good enough to get a budget to talk to black women. Now, how does that work? And for me, that's more the thing that, as an organization, you might want to look at, so that you can educate the client and say, hey, we're going to move back. And I think that even from attrition, because I've been there a lot of years, it just works on people to sit back and be in a place where I know at the end of the day, I can't make a decision. That's kind of like the discrimination that women are feeling. It's part of all the movement. Me Too movement is about discrimination and how women were treated. So that's not racial. That's just like, at the end of the day, the women knew, you're not going to put me in the movie and you want me to have this relationship with you and you're still going to give me a short check? I mean, this is huge. It's not just black, and we all suffer from the same thing that is legacy. So it's also about money, because I don't want people to kind of like be in a thing and say, oh, we're care and we didn't talk about the investment. It's the investment in women, and you got to say out loud. The whole campaign for government has been led by a male. How could that be? How could you be having a male spokesperson and women are making decisions about cars?
I'm not making a decision about everything.
No, but I'm just saying.
The data shows.
But I'm just saying, the whole campaign's led by this guy, and somebody says, this is good, you know that was a dude. You know that was a dude. That was led by some dude.
But that goes back to what Marcus was talking about. The pale male, that whole situation. It goes back to that, but it also goes back to stating that the leadership.
But I was sharing how our agendas as people have to come together. It gets past Black History Month, and all of a sudden, you know, the impact and investment is on women. Because now if you don't get to be the host, and you don't get to pitch, and y'all don't get to shoot the videos, then it comes back to the same kind of discrimination. It comes back to the same lack of equity and parity, words that we really want in the creative services. So when we think of it, it ain't a black issue, it's a us issue.
Mm-hmm.
And for young women that won't get to be directors, that affects your life for the rest of your life. When you're not able to be the host on one commercial, you can't get to the next commercial. And from a professional side, that's all I'm saying.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree, 1,000%. Okay, I know that was great. So, and that kind of leads in then to a question that we have regarding diversity and inclusion roles and positions in organizations. Do we feel, or do you panelists, do you feel that that's a viable way, by increasing these roles and brands actually growing these teams, a viable way to get more black voices in the mix? And is the fact that companies are now investing in diversity and inclusion teams, is this a direct reaction to racist issues that have products, outcomes, and things of that nature? Ebony?
Again, if done properly and you're trying to grow and expand your footprint across this cultural length, these wavelengths, fine. But if you're saying, oh wait, we did something wrong, let's try to backtrack, that's wrong. It's one thing for us to have a seat at the table, but to make an impact, we need a voice at the table. You can't just say, okay, we're gonna hire Ebony and she's gonna lead diversity and inclusion. Well, if no one's at the table that's willing to listen with open ears, criticism, honest feedback, it's all a moot point.
And budget.
And budget.
Right.
I think knowing that in the near future the minority is going to be the majority,
Right.
and knowing that that landscape is going to change, I think companies, they're facing the music, right? It's like, okay, minorities are about to be the majority, so what do we have to do to change that? So I think what has begun to happen at other companies or whatever, you start with that diversity and inclusion, but then if your leadership skills show and grow, then you become that leader in the rooms where it's not just people that look like you, right? I mean, majority, I would say when I started at GM, I was the only black female in meetings. That was a shock for me. I was like, okay, there's nobody else in here that looks like me right now. This is interesting, right? But again, when you're dealing with a company that large, that's what it is, right? But then you make your impact. We make our impact. We take these strides. You know, our team now has been in existence only 5 years. 5 years. We had to put some skin in the game to show like, hey, the Discover the Unexpected program is like really serious. The We Are Familiar program is really serious. We had to take our times. We had to go in those meetings, present ourselves, show why it's important. And now the brands come to us, hey, you know, I saw this, does this look good? We're about to start this, what do you guys think about this? And we're now included and invited to those meetings, or they're just sending us things and they're saying, hey, take a look at this, what do you think? So it takes time, but it also, to your point, it's that fear, and people have to get out of fear. I always quote Joyce Meyer's, one of my favorite phrases. She always say, just do it afraid. If you're gonna be afraid, just do it afraid. You know, because you never know what the outcome is going to be. Because what happens, you get brand loyalty, you get, repeat customers, because it's like, oh my gosh, they were talking to me. Oh my gosh, like, I like what they did here. You know, when you do that, the more the money comes, the more people, it's going to grow, and it takes time. But I think with the changes of the time and the more leadership where people are looking of a multicultural demographic, as well as more women are leading across the board. We have so many women leaders. Like, there are more women-owned businesses out here than ever before, and it continues to grow. You gotta respect that, and you can't ignore it, because all we're gonna do is get larger and larger. And it's like, okay, if you don't want to give it to me, guess what? I will do it myself. And how many women have we seen? One of them is a colleague of mine, sweet girl, Melissa Butler, Flip Bar. Like, if you don't know her story, she went on Shark Tank, right? They were like, oh no, you're not gonna work. What the bold colors, it's not gonna happen. What did she do? She took it in her own hands, and I was like, go Soror, I'm so proud of you, you rocking it out. She did it on her own. So it's like, either you're gonna be with me, or I'm gonna do it on my own. And then they say, oh my gosh, I think it's great, let's do a collaboration. You know, let's work. And it's just like, oh, you can say yay or nay. Because guess what, you said no to me before, and I'm not gonna do it. But on a larger, so I bring that to say on a larger scale, you bring people in like the COE, you have your multicultural leads, you make sure you have somebody in the room so you don't have to do that. And running back to them and saying, I want to work with you. It's like, hey, I see an opportunity right now. This looks kind of cool. We haven't done it before. You know, what do you think? Hey, this makes sense. No, don't use that symbol. Hey, she's a great person to partner with. He has a great story. He may look a little different. You know, prime example, Lil Nas X was presented to us like right before he blew up. Did not know his song. When my kids were singing it at home for like the longest. Like, who is his dad? Like, Little. I said, oh, this is that guy? My husband's like, if you will pay attention to what's on the music and not the old hip hop, maybe you'll understand what we're doing, what our kids are doing. I was like, that, I'll leave it to you. I'm not, you know, going to pay attention. But it's things like that. Always being on the plug of also what's coming up too. And being able to present it before it gets too big, and then you grow.
Right.
Then the investment grows because now you're starting here, and as it continues to grow, more things, you know, will follow on that.
There's something to be said, very much so, for what Constance just related. As blacks in this world now, our market is the globe. We're no longer relegated to our region or our city, you know, with the advance of technology. I know gentlemen who went to the same IT training that I did. He did not want to work a traditional 9-to-5 job. He markets himself on a yearly basis. He finds American companies that are setting up offices overseas. They send him overseas to set up computers and networks for their overseas offices, and he'll be there for 3 months. They'll pay him $40,000 or $50,000. He does 2 of those a year, and he's done for the year. The market is not here anymore. We actually don't necessarily, in all cases, need you to be opportunistic with us. We need you to be visionary with us. We need you to see us before we blow up. Like the Shark Tank example, we need you to see what we see before the world does and say, you know what, I think what you're doing has a really good chance. I'm willing to invest in this or try to help you bring this vision, you know, to fruition. We have very little and a dwindling use for you to see us catch on and then come in and want to take part in it. Because now the world is our market, and with the technology that currently exists, in a lot of cases, shipping, manufacturing, you know, the logistics of all of that can be handled by an individual. So as a corporation, if you are truly working towards diversity, in my opinion, you have to have the growing pains, similar to someone who's trying to work out. If you're getting back in the gym, that first week's going to be hard. Every part of your body's going to be sore. Every part of your body's going to be stiff. From a corporate perspective, I feel it should be the same way. If you are truly about diversity, not dealing with diversity, but about diversity and about multiculturalism, you have to understand there's going to be some growing pains along with that. There are going to be a few young, qualified white women who don't like that people are being put in these positions that they feel they're qualified for too. And if you don't believe in it yourself as an organization, how can you properly explain it to that employee? How can you properly explain it to them that it's not a reference or a referendum on their talent or their ability? And how can you proudly and assuredly stand there and explain to this person that we are a corporation or a company that is invested in multiculturalism, and for this realm, whether it be multicultural, we need to have a voice that understands and can speak to that culture. It's nothing against you. It's just that we have to go in a certain direction because we believe in it. How am I able to say that so eloquently? Because it happens to us all the time. If you are a corporation and you think your black employees or women employees don't notice that no one on the executive board is female, or no one on the executive board is a person of color, any kind of color, or if you think we don't notice that certain departments are African American heavy, while others are not, being candid, that's something Kara needs to work on. That's something they've been doing a better job of here. It's getting better because our new leadership came in and noticed that our client-facing teams didn't have the diversity that's represented of the city that their client resides in. Whether you like it or not, Detroit is and will be a chocolate city. Our client doesn't deal with diversity. They're about diversity. You can't be a vendor for our client and not have certain numbers that reflect that in your company. And so I think our new leadership has done a better job of being about it. Slow feet don't eat. You can't wait for everyone. You can't wait for everyone else to react. You have to take the initiative. You cannot be afraid at all. You have to be willing to. How do you know that the glass ceiling is glass? Somebody broke through it. That's the only way you know it's glass. Was that person afraid? Was that person maybe even made an example of? Because you get into the room and you're the only one there. Companies have done this before. Step outside of yourself, step outside of your fear, consult and find the different ways that other people have made it work. Implement that into your own structure and your own vision, and success is bound to follow, not because there's a blueprint for it, but there's nothing that you believe in that doesn't occur.
Right, absolutely. And I will say just a little tidbit. I recently became part of a work stream with GM Supplier Council focused on diversity and inclusion, and how do you, one, implement that within your own organization and funnel that down to your suppliers that are helping to service GM. And they have I had the first meeting Tuesday, and I was blown away, and I'm very excited to continue down this path with that team. So they are very serious about taking the diversity, inclusion, and expanding that, and being a company that's about it, and not just talking about it, but being about it. So, in the interest of time, we are going to open it up for some questions. So I'm looking in the crowd to see if anyone has any questions. There is a Q&A portion, so please feel free. Stand up, I can bring you the mic, or if you, all right, thank you. If you need the mic, I can come back here.
I think I can be pretty.
Okay, yeah, we can hear you. Yep, perfect.
Yeah. So I guess my question is, when they bring in a reactionary team, do you feel that that's a main reason for missing the mark? Because if you're only reacting to something and you're not being proactive about it, do you think that's where a lot of the issues kind of fall in? Like say this whole thing, who is it with? Not Tommy.
Ruffin.
Like this thing that's happening, they're just bringing someone in and it's just failing. But say that they had someone there from the start, it wouldn't have happened. So you feel like the reactionary part is kind of what's getting them into trouble?
Well, I think you have brands even like the NFL who are really not diverse at all. And we're in an era where they'll pick somebody. So you pick Jay-Z. And is this a qualified diversity inclusion professional that you're selling us? Now to everybody else, it's a contract. So to anybody else looking in our lens. To other people, they can fool the masses, but it won't last long. And that's the only thing about social media that brands have to be. The reactions are typical. We've seen it for decades. I think the thing is there was no investment in the front side. We know he doesn't have a multicultural team. And what I'm saying, and I appreciate your question, is just when you know that there's a lack of diversity from top to the bottom in an organization, you probably could say that at Ralph's. You don't have to even ask about the ownership of the NFL and how uncommitted they are. It takes a pivot for an organization to decide, are they going to be and figure out, like Nike has. Nike's probably one of the best examples of will be committed to you, good times or bad, athletes. So when they think of a Kaepernick, they're like, well, if you won't pay him, we will. We'll even take the hit from the stores because there's a younger generation that is not against Kaepernick. And that's white, green, Asian, the entire community is kind of like, we over y'all. We're going to buy these shoes. We like him as an athlete, and they've taken it. What you find is when you have huge holding companies and they haven't diversified themselves, and you have men that don't want to give up their checks to women, they're not even really reaction. They're hoping it's a delay. We can kill all the salmon, but when I'm die 10 years from now, it really won't matter. So I think the question is, they don't care. They really have no commitment. And that's why I'm saying to you, and just kind of even to Kara, when you say multicultural but there's no budget, nobody believes it's multicultural. When you don't empower the professional, we really don't believe. When all I see is men on the commercials, we don't believe. Even down to some of the men that you might put on the commercial that happen to be black, but I don't believe he's representative of brothers. I think he might be LGBT. So, not that he isn't a brother, but if you were looking for a black male, he wasn't that. So I think even when they start selecting people in our community, we're like, you're really not targeting us, you're just picking actors.
Yeah.
And it kind of begins to be unauthentic. Even your apology is unauthentic because you didn't hire anybody. It's kind of like Gucci did a similar thing. So don't want to take up all time.
I think reaction is a good word, but it's dangerous. Only because it's not always the worst thing. I think Nike is an excellent example of that, in that Nike, and what was just described to you, was Nike reacting before, not reacting after. Sometimes the reaction is good if when the opportunity is there before you air, the reaction is realizing you need more input beforehand. The reaction for Nike was realizing that that generation that he just spoke of that's coming up, Nike doesn't necessarily need to be concerned with every store, because the majority of this generation is not going into their store to buy their Nikes anyway.
Well, the other thing about Nike is you don't have to wonder if they have a person with budget. You don't have to wonder if they have a black PR connection. You don't have to wonder if they have a whole set of influencers. I mean, just think about it. With all the cars we have and all the dollars we've spent, do you have a influencer network that is really down with you now, given what we've come forward from 2010 to 2020? Do you have that relationship? Do you know who that person is? And I think that with Nike, they're all the way invested. They're not kind of invested. They have people who help them invest. And you don't have to wonder who that person is. The music game is very similar. You see, the movie game has gotten better. You know, when you used to go to LA, you really didn't have a Netflix as an option. So as a black creative, you didn't have. Has anybody seen the Hot Special? Who Killed Malcolm X?
Yes.
I started at
So there was a time where the only place you could have shopped at would have been a few places.
Mm-hmm.
Now they're like, no, I'll split a check with the Amazon as an example. So you've got individuals say, I might not like it, but I'll do business with you. You can use my platform. And I think for me, the message I just want to get back to, it's all about investment in an organization. If the investment is not real, then for you all, it'll come a time where you'll be losing. And they'll start cutting jobs. And I think that you've got to, as a community, invest in culture. And Nike is a cultural company, so they don't have to react as often because they're involved in the community.
Right.
Coke is involved in the community. They sponsor Essence. They're real clear. McDonald's is involved in the community. They have black owners. And ownership is everything today. 2 Chainz is an owner in something. He don't just need to perform because he knows that's just cotton picking. We want to own the plantation. We don't want it. And we're not trying to make people slaves. Just trying to do business. And I think that's just the mentality of the future. When you sit back and you think of a GQ, and you've got all of the people that they now have of color coming on there, most of these young kids have brands. Tyler, the Creator, has a festival. So you can't sit back and think that we want to just be here. This ain't about black history. We're now making history. And I think these young individuals are keeping score. The next generation is scoring. They're watching their likes. They're understanding that. And I think it's all about distribution. I mean, your lip bar, the example was she's now distributed in Target, Walmart, and everywhere. So she got distribution without begging for it. She got distribution without giving away her company. She was a real female G. She said, I believe in me. And you don't have to confer your likes on me. I'll go get my own likes as a woman. And I'll be my own CEO as a woman. And that's the message. You know, we want young women to move. So if black folk aren't moving forward, typically white women are not moving forward as fast, just as much. So any oppression is what we don't want. So the lack of oppression from brands that don't have to react because they already have a community investment. And I'm not saying that Chevy doesn't, because I really have a friend in Paul. At least I can say I know him, and he does invest in my brand. But can we do better? I believe we all can be more culturally insightful and really begin to invest in marketing that is different. If you're doing the same plan with the same spokesman, that's an old record. That's an old record. And ain't nobody dancing to that.
Paul Edwards is not with Chevrolet anymore. Stephen Joris is now leading Chevrolet.
Oh, man.
Did you want to jump
Me
in?
too.
Okay, we have another question right here.
I guess sort of a question, but I had a comment on, I know this is the past, present, and the future. So like we were saying with the lip bar, I'm thinking of, at this point, do we want to continue to try to find a seat at the table versus already using the leverage that we have? I know me, myself, I mean, I'm just one person, but I live in a high-rise downtown that's black-owned. He owned dealerships around the city. I shop at the Lip Bar. I go to the 10 Nail Bar. All of these are black-owned business, and I'm very conscious about doing that so they can have that leverage in the market. So I feel like we need to, we're the creators. A lot of the things that are created, like we have Black History pictures here around the building, but mostly of entertainers, where we were mainly the inventors of a lot of different things that are that haven't been told and haven't been shared. Even with the Gucci thing, I flew out to Harlem to meet Dapper Dan and had a custom piece from him. And I feel like that's different from my Gucci piece says, made in Harlem by Dapper Dan. I went strictly to him. That's a part of his brand. They give him the fabrics to create, just like he did Underground for so long. Now we have the official market, but I just feel like when is the time for us to take that power into our own hands? Because am I going to continue to join a company who's just trying to meet a quota? Like you said, that's just where they're trying to go, oh, we need to do this, so let's just do this, let's just bring more. But once that kind of dies down and people are not looking at it anymore, is it going to go back to the same thing? Is it the same thing and they're just a face?
I think, and you make a really good point, I think what's happening now, I think that's changing. I think we're now, as a community, we're starting to really own it. And it's more about, because see, what happens, you have these things, but then they'll either sell it to a larger company, or if they passed away, their children have it, and then their children sell it, right? Instead of you keep it within the family. I will say one thing that, again, I mean, slavery, all of that, you know, we just haven't been able to grasp, right? But then we still have those inventors. We still have George Washington Carver. We still have these, you know, Booker T. You have these amazing people and other people that have done things where, to your point, it's now, you know what, time out. Let's just really raise the bar on everything. You live in a high rise. You live here. You know, so I think we're getting there now as a community. And if more and more people start to say, I'm keeping my money here, I'm gonna do it myself, or support that person who's doing it, and let's continue to feed the money, and then that grows, and then other people grow, and then I think us as a people, it will get there, but we getting there, but it's a lot of trauma.
But for a lot of vendors, it's you're not getting inside, and you're a receipt shareholder. So if you go do business at Target or Walmart, and you want to bring your product, we really should be able to get in faster than we can. Particularly when the data is, okay, I'm only asking to be in the top 20 DMAs. It's not like I'm even asking to go to Iowa. I just want distribution. So a lot of things are controlled by distribution. And that's not owned by us, but we are shareholders of those organizations, those corporations. We're spending our money in their stores. We're walking in your door. At the end of the day, that's a key point. Because if Lip Bar can be in 10,000 doors, she's doing way better. So we don't want to just have to build our houses. We want to build our houses, but we still want to have access to a road we paid for. Right. We literally paid for that road. Yeah, we literally paid to be in that store. And I think that's part of it. There was the young lady, the question right behind you.
I did, actually. So here in America, you know, GM is global, and we're really working on the inclusion. Do you feel that the European markets are ahead of us in that? Are they behind us? Is there anything for inclusion in like the European and global markets? Because a lot of our companies are owned by Japanese, by Chinese companies, so.
It's funny you say that. I would always crack up sometimes. I'm like, I work on the global, Chevrolet global market, but I'm only doing North America. Like I'm only doing the United States of America. And sometimes, and I'm like, when are we going global? Because to your exact point, I'm like, what are we doing over in China, for GM? Like, what are we doing over in Europe? How are we marketing there? So it's funny you say that. I'm sorry I don't have the answer for you.
I do.
But it's like, right, but it is a question that I have asked before. If I'm on a global team, but the thing is, we need to work, if we can't figure out the right recipe at home, we can't touch global yet. We got to get it right here.
Right, but some of the questions you have, just the number one competitor. Yeah, I'm not saying it. And number one competitor, just so that you have an idea. I don't have to wonder who can give me $1 million budget. She looks like her. And I can call her on her cell phone and say, it's this. Now, clearly, me having her cell phone number doesn't mean it's something to me. It's a professional relationship. I go through all the same vetting as every other industry, but I'm looking at somebody who really wants to make an investment in my brand, in my ideas, because that's all we sell in here. Reach. I think to you, yes, your foreign competitor has a person that looks like her, that in a company that they entrust and spend millions to have connections that are deeper and authentic. Deeper and authentic. And that's the elephant in the room. It's not to your answer. And they figure that out. They want to be the best. They want to know what's next. They don't. You give them yesterday, they say that's an old dance. What's new? They don't want to have. That's where they are mentally. They're like, if it's just volume, we can buy all the volume in the world. But tell me the girl is getting ready to break the internet. That's what they want to know. Show me the show.
Serious testing is about serious test and learns too. You have test and learn. We have test and learn
Budget
budgets.
for test and learn.
That was about to say the test and learn budget. Like, what is that test and learn budget?
But not
a little piece, like
a little budget.
Like here.
And then have people like you on the team. So it's you and Constance working on an idea, and people in the room and say, okay, we just want to try this. Because it could be De Jesus. It could be all the new players who you've never really heard of to now, okay, I'm going to be there. Or I want to.
Fear's out the door. It goes back to that fear. Yeah. It goes back to that fear and that risk.
You have to spend money to make money. Yeah. Everyone knows this. But if you fail, there are lessons in the failure. But many people don't want to fail. You just want to let me knock it out the park the first time.
Lady in the back.
I can't speak to all of that.
Lady in the back.
Go ahead, Marcus, and then we'll take one more question.
I can't speak to all of that. But what I can speak to is if I don't believe in you, you cannot have my money.
Amen.
Period. I look down the street and I see a beautiful facility that houses Detroit Pistons and Detroit Red Wings. And then I look at all surrounding blocks that they bought and were supposed to develop and help the community that my daughter has to walk through when she leaves school. And I still see those lots empty. I still see that development not happening. So guess who can't have my money? Not a Piston, not a Red Wing, not a parking structure, not anything. Now when Royce the 5'9" does his show, I'll be there.
Okay,
when Wu-Tang does their show with the
CSO,
symphony, I'll be there.
And when Janet Jackson does her show.
Yes.
We have one more question back here. We'll take one more, and then we'll have one final little word from panelists. So go ahead.
To me, multicultural should be involved in every single initiative we do. How do we, maybe we're not in leadership, what are some tactics you would give us to kind of voice that in meetings where we're allocating budget to certain places? Like making sure that that has a piece of every pie?
Say it.
Yeah, I think so. From me being the only multicultural person here, I guess my thing is, if you have suggestions, come, speak. Like, I sit over there by the window. It's nothing more than you just coming and expressing your interest in what you see. Because to be honest, a lot of us, we're going through the motions every day, doing the same thing, in and out of meetings. But if someone outside of our team has an advice or insight or something, come and say it.
I think the other thing is just to kind of culturally put out information on, are we doing that as a team? I think you've got to ask the question. You know, I think everybody in the room has to begin to ask the question. Because the system's set up for a reason, profitability. But at the end of the day, you know, are we really being authentic as an organization? And I think pet projects to test and learn are good ways. That way people can begin to believe in your vision. Mm-hmm. And you should have vision.
Again, 5 years. It took us 5 years to really be able where they're like coming to us. Hey, got this idea. That took 5 years. So things take time. But for you and anybody else in here, it's just like, if it's, you have a question, it's a thought, it's like, yo, I saw this, you know, could this work here? Bring it up, because closed mouths don't get fed, right? So it's just like, the keeping the idea in your mind is not going to flourish and manifest. So it's just about, hey, you know what, Ebony, I mean, if you're Ebony, so, you know, I was thinking about this, I'm about to go into this meeting. Again, do you have anything? Because sometimes it's the data. GM is driven by data. What is that data looking like, right? Being able to provide that. Do you have something that I can share, that I can put forth on what I'm already working on? And then I can say, hey, and, you know, my partner's here, we'll collaborate even more, but I wanted to show you this little bit of idea that I would love to grow on. You know, I have this and I would like to see it grow more. What can we do? I mean, it's just really just the building blocks, laying the foundation down, and then keep going. I know you had a question.
I don't really have like a question, I just kind of have a comment. Because I think what all of you spoke was just so profound, so much information, so much wisdom, your experiences that you have, that you've shared, are just very impactful. But I think, to me, like, having this meeting, like, I've been here basically 6 years, and I haven't seen much of this since I've been here. And even sitting here today, like, it seems to me like, while, you know, when I go to church all the time, you know, they're always like, you know, you want to go where you're celebrated, not just tolerated. It seems like to me in this that there should be more leadership. More leadership. Like, as I look around the room, I mean, not at this point of the hour, but at the initial point of the hour, I feel like the people that can do something and be more impactful and create more inclusiveness and diversity, and hear these points and hear these perspectives and how it makes you feel, I don't think those people are here. So it's almost like you're still talking amongst yourself, which to me, I think that sends more of a message than, so even, you know, sometimes when you have these conversations, you think like, do I even want to say anything? Because what's the backlash to this? Because I've been here a minute, and I always say that oftentimes when we say something, you know, when you're in these meetings for your team, it's always like, you know, speak up if you have an issue, if you have a concern. But oftentimes when you speak up, or you anonymously, the next thing you know, you got a situation, or the spotlight is on you because they feel like you're the issue. So, because I'm not the person that really, I won't say I don't care, but I'm not the person that feels like your silent voice is going to ever get you heard. So I feel like whatever's going to come is going to come to you regardless. And I think because I do have, I have more of a foundation outside of work, so I don't allow that to put me in a position of where I don't think we should say anything. But I just think as I sat here and listened to everybody speak and looked at the room, it's just, I think it's amazing to me that the people that probably should be here and hear the voices of the people that work here are not here. So it's like you have this allowance that they allow you to to formulate this group or this meeting, but it still shows that it's not that important to you because you're allowing me to do it. So you can say, I allowed you to do it, but if you're still not going to be a part of what it's doing, how is it really impactful? How do we leave here with something different? How do we leave here with somebody that's so informative, that has so much information, that can bring so much more diversity, that can have this go around to 22 and to 23 and the floor that we're on? How can you do that if it's still amongst us?
Because you have to understand that some things are not for sale. Even your check isn't worth it. That's not an easy decision. And the question that you asked earlier and your statement, some of it requires understanding that this corporate environment is almost like a chess game. If you can't stand out front and say this certain thing to the group of leadership, sometimes it helps to put yourself in positions where you can learn the nuances of certain individuals. And if you're in that environment, you may be able to figure out this person, I can pull to the side and have a conversation with them. This person, I can let them know what my concerns are or where I think we need to go or that my ideas aren't being heard, and I will not have to worry about backlash. But there always comes a point where you have to determine whether what it is you want to speak on and what it is you believe in, what's it worth to you? There have been a few days in my 8 years here where I've left out of a meeting and I've gone right to my coworker and I said, look man, I don't know if I'm gonna be here by the end of the day. If I'm not, just know that I love you. Thank you for your hard work. But there came a time where they needed to understand that part of me is not for sale. You can't convince me to bypass it because I get a paycheck. You can't convince me to bypass it because you believe differently. But what I do want to make sure they understand is that my reason for feeling so strongly about this is because I have the same vision you do, this company's success. And this is what I believe is important for this company's success, because whether you believe in the process that I'm saying or not, we're here. And what we're feeling is actual and reality. Sometimes they listen, sometimes they don't show up.
And I'm gonna say we're talking about, the theme of this panel here is the impact of Black voices, and really
any voice,
right? And so we're here, we're receiving, we're being enlightened. We see these leaders in the industry who have attained a certain level of success, ownership, right? So that's where you now have the opportunity to use your voice, right? We talked about the fear of the companies. We can't have that fear. And in some cases, backlash does happen, backlash does occur, but we all here today have had an opportunity to hear, receive this information, and it's on us now to go and share that information and speak up, like you wanted to say, how can I bring my ideas forth with respect to multicultural? How can I be more influential? 'Cause this event was going to happen regardless of what somebody. I make my decisions and I ask for permission or forgiveness, right? I don't ask, so I ask for forgiveness. And anybody who was a part of the planet can tell you that. So, and that's why it was important to me that we did something, because I've been here 2.5 years and I've noticed the talk but not the walk. So it was important to me to let's get the walk. So this is first of many. And I had the same thoughts you had as well.
I appreciate it.
I had the same thoughts you had as well, but this is the first of many. I just want that to be known.
So if y'all don't see me after the day, you'll know.
Well, you need a lawyer.
I mean, think about it this way. The employee-employer relationship is what? It's a contract. In exchange for your ideas, knowledge, skill set, and energy, they give you money. So by virtue of even having you as an employee, they've implied in this contract that your thoughts matter, that your voice matters, right? At the end of the day, of employees, we want to feel like we have an individual stake in the success of this company. None of us do well feeling like a drone, feeling like a robot or a cog in the wheel. Sometimes your voice is the only way that you can remind yourself that you matter, that your opinion matters. And the worst opinion is the one that's not heard. If they don't do anything about what you say to them, that's a reflection of them. If you're nervous to the point where you won't even say it, that might be a reflection of you. That could also be a reflection of them. Is that environment, does the environment make you feel safe to be able to come and talk to someone? Can you be in a team meeting and you see a way that multicultural could be added in and be advantageous, but you're worried about putting that out there because of how that person may react? That's where leadership comes into play also, because if you run into that problem, you should be able to go to someone about that. Your voice always matters because you're here. How much work's done if none of you show up?
And one thing I tell my 9-year-old daughter, and even sometimes I have to tell myself this sitting at that desk over there, you have to trust your dopeness. At the end of the day, you dope. All around, can't nobody take it from you. So you have to trust your voice, and you have to trust your dopeness.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, so we're going to let Constance have famous last words. We are pressed for time. So if you could just wrap us up, so, you know, give to the people something about the power of using your voice.
Yeah. So I'm going to stand up and do this. I used to do this with my students back in the day, and it's like, as I'm hearing everything, and like what you just said, it was like, keep spot on. This was a poem and a phrase that we used to have our kids do. Some of you may know it, some of you may not know it. But it always went, I am somebody. My mind is a pearl. I can do anything. What I am is my gift from God. What I become is my gift to God, right? You are somebody. And I like I said, I paraphrased it. But you are somebody. We have our voice. One thing I told myself for 2020, I'll be 40 this year. My husband and I be married 14 years. Well, 15 years, I'm sorry. We have 4 children. I'm raising 4 brown boys. So I'm there in a world where it's crazy, right? But I told myself one of the biggest things for 2020, command your space. Command it. Be intentional with everything that you're doing, no matter what. You know the power that you have within you. You know the gifts that are within you. Past, present, future, to your point, it's spot on. But we know we get those feelings, those inklings. I say it's the Holy Spirit guiding me. But I know when it's time to move. I know when it's time to sit still and not say nothing. I know when it's like, okay, so let's talk about this right here. Let's reel it back in, right? You were wrong, let's reel it back in. Or, you know what, this is cool. And now let's expand it. Let's move, let's grow. Bring it back into the community as much as we can, right? Bring it, sow it in, because that's where the generational wealth comes in. But it's also raising our future leaders, our kids, those stories. It's not just our regular Martin Luther Kings and Rosa Parks. It's other unnamed, unsung heroes, right? Hidden Figures was a beautiful example of not just black women, but women as a whole. And we have it in us. So it's about trusting your dopeness. It's about knowing that you're somebody, commanding your space, and being intentional at the end of the day. So, thank you.
Thank you to the panelists for coming. It was awesome. We really appreciate you. Yes, so we have the giveaway. So before you leave, we're going to do the giveaway, and then we're going to get some photos.